Welcome, welcome, welcome to On Friday Inspire. I am your host, Aaliyah, the Purpose Midwife. I want to thank y'all so much for joining us this beautiful Tuesday evening. You could have been doing anything else and been anywhere else, but you chose to spend it with us. And for that, we're totally grateful. So thank you for those who are tuning in, whether you're on Facebook, YouTube, um, LinkedIn. Thank y'all for joining us. Do me a favor while I thank our sponsors. I want y'all to hit that share button so that we can all learn about this beautiful, vast, um, um, golden history that we have. Okay. All right. So our first sponsor is, y'all going to get to meet the founder herself, Mom Biz Boss herself, but Mom Biz Boss stands for Multiple Operational Managers. If you are an entrepreneur or an aspiring entrepreneur and you want to connect or need to connect with some women that's on fire and doing business, you need to connect. Check them out at mombizboss.org. You do want to be a part of that organization with us. We have an awesome time. We have virtuals, they have meetups. I don't have a chapter in South Carolina yet. However, I look forward to the virtuals when I can join them and see all my awesome sisters and entrepreneur friends. Hey, everybody. Thank y'all so much for tuning in. Hit that share button and share with a friend so we can learn tonight. We're celebrating our history, Black History Month. Next, we have, if you check out any of my books, you can go to onfireinspire.com. We have Dance with Mina, where we do Zumba and line dance on Mondays and Thursdays at 6 p.m. They do virtual as well as live sessions, in-person sessions. Trying to make sure I'm not forgetting anybody, y'all. That's it for tonight. All right, so we're gonna jump in and we're gonna have Teresa get us started. So welcome back to On Friday Inspire. How are you this great evening?
I said, I'm loving the music. It really motivates me. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Is it still playing?
It is. It's on fire to inspire.
You're telling me it's supposed to stop. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So I'm just here today. I'm Teresa Wright Johnson with Mom Biz Boss, where Aaliyah said it. Thank you for allowing us to be such a sponsor where we believe in moms being multiple operational managers. But for me, I am a Black history professor's child and teacher. So I'm all about Black history. And when I say that, y'all heard that saying, black don't crack, beige don't age. Okay. We come in different hues. We come in different colors. So tonight, when Aaliyah said, who do you want to speak about? I am a speaker. I'm a international speaker, international best-selling author, but I'm someone that's an avid learner, somebody that always loves learning. And so I said, I want to talk about Sojourner Truth. Y'all, you know why I want to talk about Sojourner Truth real quick? Because she was a fabulous mother. She went to some depths. Have you heard of Sojourner Truth? Have you heard of her name before? You may have heard of her, but do you know her story? Her story goes way back to the 17 and 1800s, right? She was born, she was 12 of 12 children. She was born to a family that was enslaved. She actually ended up still being enslaved in the city of New York. In New York, y'all, back in the day, they had banned slavery, but you still were an indentured servant until you were in your 20s. So after your 20s, you're supposed to be let go and be free. And she was waiting for that chance. She was trying to have a life. Now, she was born, her name was Isabella Bumfrey when she was born, or Bumfrey. So we'll tell you why she became Sojourner Truth. She was waiting to go ahead and be free, but guess what? Unfortunately, her slave master or owner, he said he was going to free her. He didn't. Well, in between the time of becoming an adolescent and into her 20s, in between that time somewhere, she married another enslaved individual or someone else. And unfortunately, she had to be broken up from her spouse or her significant other. She had 3 children. This is where the motherhood part come in, y'all. This is where the mother, she had 3 children and she was looking for her freedom. She ran off because they wouldn't give her freedom. She was only able to take 1 child. At some point, she gets her children back. But she, early in the 1800s, y'all, in the 1800s, she went to court in New York City because her child was sold into slavery unlawfully. And at some point, after a lot of trial and tribulation, she got her son back. If that's not a mom biz boss, what's not? She got her child Philip back. This was at a time where Black people, let alone a Black woman, enslaved and former enslaved person, was able to do such a thing. So she got her child back, but she also started going to a church, a Methodist church. And there she learned how to read, apparently, because she didn't read. She didn't know how to read or write. So she learned that. But also she said, then just honestly, a lot of us as people of color, we know faith comes. And I'm gonna tell y'all this other thing. The other reason I wanted to talk about this today is because she was a pioneer in history. But guess what else she cared about? Women's rights. If any time, then now do we not need to talk about women's rights, diversity, inclusion, equity? She was doing it way back then. Had it not been for our foremothers that did these things. So she said God came to her in a prayer. She was praying in this church, this Methodist church. She didn't know how to read. She didn't know how to write. Do you know she won oracle contests throughout the nation? That she was traveling in the 1800s, speaking as a Black woman at conferences or conventions or festivals, what they called them then. And she was being terrorized because of the color of her skin. And what she said was, she was not in fear because she knew her Lord was going to take care of her. And her Lord told her that she had to go out there and give the message of not just for Black people, of equity, inclusion, for just Black people, but women, for women. So my lady today that I wanted to talk about was Sojourner Truth. She died in a very old age, all the way until up to the time that she died. She was still traveling around America in the 1800s, y'all, early 1900s. She was a mother that her child was taken away. Her freedom was taken away. She went and found her child, got her child, fought for her child, fought for her rights. She's one of the pioneers of women's rights, the pioneers of equity and inclusion of Black history for our rights. So she named herself Sojourner Truth because she said God told her to, and she was about telling the truth, speaking the truth, giving the truth, and helping others. So that's all I got. That's Sojourner Truth. That's her, y'all. She was someone that really cared about equity and inclusion for African American people. I'm gonna tell y'all this. I don't believe African American people. I don't never heard of that. That's some Black people, people of color. And then she believed in fighting for our family rights. Had it not been from her, I probably wouldn't be able to speak in front of you now. And she was an awarded speaker before Black women were ever even out there speaking, before Black women had ever been in a courtroom. So what did I tell y'all? I'm gonna end this with this. Just know that the highest surviving person, if it's an infant in a NICU, when a child comes prematurely born, is a Black woman. What does that tell y'all? That's all I gotta say. Black History Month is our history because that's where we come from, because we're women of color, people of color, and I'm excited every day that I am able to be a woman of color and Black. That's it.
Thank you so much, Teresa. Look, I've known some things about Sojourner Truth, but not to that depth. So thank you for sharing with us, and we appreciate you for joining us. All right, y'all. So we have some awesome presenters tonight, as well as some awesome presentations. So next up, we have Monique Jackson. Monique, welcome to On Friday Inspire. How are you?
I am wonderful. Thank you so much for having me today.
Great. I want you to introduce yourself to the On Friday Inspire family.
Okay, well, my name is Monique Jackson, and I have a consulting company called Molea Enterprises, where I work with single mothers, helping them create balance between the work life and motherhood. So I'm excited to be here today. And so the individual that I am so inspired to talk about is Angela Davis. And the reason why I selected Angela Davis is because my daughter, she's 18 now. But when she was 5 years old, I asked her, what does she want to be for Halloween? And my child told me she wanted to be Angela Davis. So I'm like, a 5-year-old wanted to be Angela Davis. And I thought that was so profound. And so now 13 years later, she is getting ready to go off to college. And ironically, the way things are in our political system, she may be fighting for some of the same things that Angela Davis was fighting for back in the 70s, if you kind of catch my drift without being too political. So anyway, I am going to speak about someone that I admire myself. So Angela Yvonne Davis, she was born on January 26th in 1944 in Birmingham, Alabama. As an adult, she became engaged in a lot of, the far left politics. She studied at various universities from Frankfurt to the University of California in San Diego. She moved around a lot, from East Germany. Then she eventually got her doctor's degree from the University of Berlin. She joined a lot of feminist and second wave movements. She campaigned for the Vietnam War. It's quite, easy to say that from the beginning, Angela was an activist. In 1969, she was hired as an assistant professor for philosophy at the University of California in Los Angeles. It's better known to most of us. I'm an LA girl as UCLA, but by 1970, she had already been arrested with 3 felonies because of some guns that were found in her possession. They were used for a hostile takeover. Now, this would not be the first trouble that Angela Davis would find herself in. A lot of her work was tied to feminist work and also for the Soviet Union. She was very controversial. Angela Davis always spoke her mind. She spoke what she believed in. Some might say that she was a poster child for African American activism. Some might have said that she was a little too far left. She was very seldom studied in schools. She was very seldom recognized for her contributions for the civil rights movement because a lot of people think that she went too far, that she wasn't traditional, that her style was not what a lot of American people would think would be, very known for the civil rights movement. She was more of a radical, a feminist, an activist. She was a member of the Communist Party, but she was also an affiliate of the Los Angeles chapter for the Black Panther Party. In 1970, the FBI director, J. Edgar Hoover, listed Angela Davis on the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives list. And this came after the death of a judge, Harold Haley, from the Marion Court Supreme. He was unfortunately murdered by a young man. He was shot to death and killed with several other individuals. And this controversy was actually what caused Angela Davis to be arrested in relation to this situation. Now, she had nothing to actually do with this killing, but the gun that was actually used by the gentleman who did do the killing was a gun that was purchased by Angela Davis. So she was arrested for this incident, but then she went to the courtroom and she pled not guilty for this particular incident. A whole situation was created around this for her. In her defense, she stood in front of that same courtroom, pled not guilty after all type of situations that were created for this. She was found not guilty, ironically, by a whole white jury. After all of this situation, she traveled the world. She received several awards, honorary doctorates, even a nomination from the Communist Party to be the vice president as Gus Hall's running mate in 1980 and in 1984. Additionally, she spoke against the minister Louis Farrakhan about the Million Man March in 1995. She argued that the exclusion of women, saying that it promoted male chauvinism. She continues to oppose the death penalty. And, in 1997, with all the progression, Angela Davis came out that she was a lesbian, and now times it's really acceptable. During those times, back a long time ago, that was not something that, she could probably come out or feel comfortable in that particular setting. In recent years, Angela's work has reflected her concerns over the incarceration of poverty-stricken and marginalized people in those groups. Angela Davis, she's not discussed often in schools, but her contribution cannot be dismissed. She was a very important person during those times fighting for equalization for African Americans, for women. I guess sometimes when I think about, and I envision the person that said, the revolution will not be televised, I actually envision Angela Davis standing right next to that person, saying, with her fist held high in the sky, shouting, "Not only am I Black and I'm proud, but I'm Black, I'm proud, I'm a communist, I'm a feminist, and this revolution should very well be televised." So that's my story about Angela Davis.
Wow, wow, wow. You know, you hear of names, and we learned very little in school about our history. And so you hear of
Mhm.
names, and you hear one-liners or maybe one word or two. So y'all are giving us some good stuff. I mean, we're learning about our history. So thank you so much, Monique, for presenting Angela Davis tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a
You're
wonderful
welcome.
rest of your evening.
You too. All right, y'all. So I hope y'all learning. I hope I'm not the only one learning something tonight, but y'all, this just does my heart so well to learn about our vast history because I know y'all ain't read none of this what they telling y'all in the history books. You didn't because it wasn't in there. And if you did, I want to know what history book you read. Okay. Well, all right. Next up, we have Miss Kayla Buzz. Kayla, welcome on Friday Inspire. How are you this evening?
Hi, doing great. How are you?
I'm great. I'm great. So, Kayla, I want you to introduce yourself to the On Fire to Inspire family.
My name's Kayla. I'm a branding and event photographer, and I'm also a real estate agent with Keller Williams.
All right. And who will you be presenting tonight?
Today, I'll be talking about Gordon Parks. He was the first Black published photographer.
Okay.
Yeah. So, in 1948, 6 years before the Civil Rights Movement would officially begin, Gordon Parks became Life magazine's first Black staff photographer. During nearly 3 decades with this publication, he made an unforgettable impression not only on its glossy pages, but also on American society as a whole. He produced powerful photo essays that drew the public's attention to issues like segregation and racism, but the artist was neither expected nor felt compelled to only chronicle topics connected to the color of his skin. In addition to shooting still images, he was a filmmaker, directing the iconic 1971 film Shaft, as well as an author, musician, painter, and composer. And each of his artistic pursuits served as a channel for his humanitarianism and activism. He then continued to shoot for Life magazine until 1972, the same year the magazine discontinued as a weekly publication. But he didn't stop creating. He published memoirs, novels, and poetry, directed films, and wrote music for a 1989 ballet titled Martin about the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. In 1988, he was awarded the National Medal of Arts by President Ronald Reagan. And though he never finished high school, he received more than 50 honorary doctorates from colleges and universities. He continued involving his various art forms until his death at age 93 in 2006, and his work continues to be exhibited decades later.
Thank you. We learn something new every day. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for teaching us about Gordon Parks this evening. Who knew?
It's very important to talk about photography because you always see the pictures in the history books, but people never give credit to the people who are actually out there living in the moment and actually capturing these moments for these people to look at later.
Exactly. Especially when they were people of color.
Exactly.
All right. Well, thank you again for sharing and thank you for coming.
Thank you.
All right, y'all. So our final presentation tonight is about Dr. Brittany. And Dr. Brittany, welcome back to On Front Inspire. I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
There you go. Yes, ma'am. So,
Yeah, I was just saying thank you for having me. I don't think last time I did like a formal long introduction of myself. I don't think.
no, ma'am, I don't think you did.
I'm going to do it during Black History Month. I'm proud to do it. A little bit about me. I'm an educator. I'm a certified mental health coach, and I own a company called Branding by Brittany. That's BRITNY. I do basically I fuse together my branding concepts along with my mental health certification. So I do coaching, I do graphic design, marketing, branding, and all of those things tied together. So my main audience is small business owners, entrepreneurs. So if you're interested, check out my website, brandingbybrittany.com. But the person that I'm highlighting today is Dr. Anita Phillips. She is a trauma therapist. She's a minister. She's a very transformative public speaker. She's an author. She came to my attention when she published The Garden Within in 2023. She does a really great job of presenting some findings that have went unnoticed for centuries. One of the things that she does really well is she ties in spirituality with theology, with neurobiology. She does a good intermixing of those different concepts. So she opens her book up by talking about her sister, Valerie, and she talks about how her sister was dealing with mental illness, but at the time that was very foreign to them. Her family didn't know it. She came from a very religious family. They own churches, so she's a pastor's kid. And so during this time, with it being very foreign, for a long time, they were, doing a lot of praying, anointing, and things of that nature. What it led to is her sister ends up basically using drugs to cope until later on they discovered that she has schizophrenia, and it basically is a catalyst for her getting involved as a therapist today. But she ended up discovering that the neurons that make up our body, they look like plants. She has a lot of different pictures, diagrams in her books, like even the cover. Hopefully y'all can see this. It's like a heart, and you can kind of see the flower growing out of it. So essentially, she talks about how the Garden of Eden, and it's a super complex concept, so I hope I give it justice, but she talks about how our heart, think of it like the ground, our mind, think of it as the place where seeds are planted. So that would be beliefs or thoughts. Our heart, which is the ground, is filled with our emotions, and then our actions make up the different fruits that are produced. So she does a good job of breaking down Matthew chapter 13, the parable of the sower, and she talks about how the wayside soil is essentially talking about an area in our lives where perhaps our hearts have been hardened due to different events in our lives. So again, it's an emotional reaction, and because of that emotional reaction, different beliefs that people introduce to us, we're not able to hold on to those things. People around us can pick up those things and indulge, but we're not able to really hold on and apply those concepts, those beliefs. And then the next one talks about the stony ground, stony soil, and she talks about how there is anger. So a person who's easily angered, basically for a moment, like they might get a little piece of the information, but they're not able to hold on to it because any outside catalyst can distract them from that information. And so again, they don't retain it. And then she talks about basically the last one where it talks about how the word is essentially produces something for a small moment, but then it withers up. And she talks about that comes from us having fears and allowing it to be, again, an emotion that guides us. And so she talks about not fighting our emotions, but instead addressing them and nurturing them. So taking the time to acknowledge, this is how I feel, and then thinking about like what you need to do to work through that. Not meaning like hide the emotions, ignore the emotions, but more so like recognizing I naturally have to experience certain emotions. If I'm overwhelmed, I might need to cry. That's a water to my heart. That's cleansing or getting out things that shouldn't be there. If there are certain beliefs, ideas that we've been holding on to, she talks about how to pick out those weeds, how to, again, acknowledge it and get the help and go through the steps. So I chose Dr. Anita Phillips because she does a really good job of merging together things in our community that really go overlooked. For the Black community, therapy has always been a very stigmatized conversation. And so instead of assuming or reacting like, oh, what's wrong with you? You're in therapy. She does a really good job of talking about the positives of therapy, the positives of acknowledging what we're feeling, that you're not weak because you feel or that you're vulnerable, but that's a strength. That's where your superpower comes from. You actually can use and thrive more productively by acknowledging those emotions. So that's why I chose Dr. Nita Phillips. She published it in 2023. I'm glad to acknowledge somebody who's still alive and still living in her purpose. She has a whole lot of videos out there. I'll show this because I almost forgot, because I wish I probably spoke super quickly. But she has this image. So all of her findings are based on science and theology. It's not a contradiction of it, but they complement each other very well. She has the male version as well, but basically, again, just talking about how our body holds on to these neurons, these signals in our body from all the different interactions we have, and that the only reason certain things stay with us is because our heart was already prepared to receive those things, whether they were positive or negative. And so, how do you work through it when it's negative? How do you boost it, continue to water it when it's positive? So,
Thank you so much. And I happen to read that book. I love that book, and I love her teachings. She is phenomenal, and it's amazing how. When did she release that?
2023.
2023, and it's amazing how she puts all of that, the science and the basis of how our brain looks, how our heart look, and all of that, and tie it into why we are the way we are, how we why we think the way we think. It's amazing. It's amazing. That was nothing but Holy Spirit.
How do I talk about this in a short period of time? So I feel like I rambled, but y'all need to look into Dr. Anita Phillips.
Look at her. Look up that book. I think it's on Hoopla. You can actually listen to the audio. I love to hear, if I'm listening to an audio book, I would love to hear it from the author themselves, reading or dictating it, because you hear their voice, you hear their passion, and it's just something more about than somebody else reading to you like a robot. Yes, but thank you so much for sharing with us. We appreciate you, and we look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right, y'all. So, did y'all learn something tonight? Now, if I give y'all a quiz, could you answer it? I'm not gonna give y'all a quiz. I'm just teasing. But I just wanted to make sure that this whole month that we are celebrating our history, y'all. There is so much that I learn every single year. I learn all the time, and it amazes me that we're just hearing things like you hear a first just happening, you know, in 2025. You hear a first that just happened in 2023, and things of that nature. So it's amazing. It's amazing. And so if you start looking at who you are and where you come from, the heritage of where you come from, you might have, your ancestors may have been slaves, but they weren't slaves beforehand. You came from kings and queens, and understanding that, that's when you want to allow your life to just look like a slave, because that's not who God created you to be. God created you in his image. You are a child of the kings, okay? And so it's time for us to walk out that which he's called us to be. So for our people and a lot of the people who are living subpar, it's time to rise up. It's time to get up and move in the vein of, I'm a king's kid, and I got to walk this life out the way he created me to be, not on a stigmatism or something that someone has called me, or a tag that someone has called me. That's not my reality. That's your fiction. Okay, so remember that, y'all. Walk out your purpose and the plan that God has for your life. We will be back next week learning more to new people coming, as well as some new people being presented to us of our vast history that we didn't know about. But guess what? It's not lost, because we're going to make sure that we know about it. I love y'all. I'll see y'all same time, same place next week. I am Leah, the Purpose Midwife. I love y'all, and have a great week.